Hey guys, it's Margaret from Let's Learn to Sew. Today's video is going to show you how to take your favorite store-bought t-shirt and make a pattern from it. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our pattern paper, and because this is going to be on knit fabric, we want to fold our paper in half. I've got my favorite t-shirt. What I did was I took it to the iron and I pressed it in half. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up this crease on that folded edge of my paper. Make sure I've got it lined up so I have several inches so that I can add in my seam allowance and the hem. I'm going to feel it. Okay. First thing you want to do is make sure everything is smooth and your seams are lined up. I'm going to take some pink chalk and I'm going to trace around this side seam. I'm also going to trace around down here at the bottom. And then my shoulder seam, make sure I've got that straight. And what I'm doing is I'm drawing my line from where it joins at the sleeve to the neckband. Okay. Now, because our sleeve is on here, we don't want to take it apart. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my tracing wheel. And if yours looks like this, it's not quite as pointy, that's fine. You'll just have to press in a little bit harder than with a tracing wheel that has the sharper points. I'm going to come right in here on that seam and begin tracing that seam. And you would do the same thing if this was the one you were using. If you don't have a tracing wheel, what you can do is you can take a pin and just make little pokes through and then connect those dots. Now I can see my dotted line. I'm going to come in. So now I have where my sleeve's going to join the arm. And we're going to do the same thing here at the neck. I'm going to go right in that seam where the neckband has been attached to the front of the shirt and come all the way around to that middle section. Move the shirt, and at this point you can see we have the front of our shirt. So I'm going to go ahead and label this front. And I'm going to make sure that I label it t-shirt, because a t-shirt pattern is different than a pattern that you would do for a shirt that's going to be on woven fabric. Now what we need to do, because this shirt was sewn together, when we traced it, those seam allowances were inside the shirt. So we have to add in that seam allowance. What we're going to do is we're going to add a 1/2 inch in the sleeve and the neck, and we're going to add in 5/8 here on the side. This is a seam allowance ruler. Any place on it between the markings is 5/8. If you don't have one of these, then just use your regular ruler. You can also use a seam gauge. So you can take your seam gauge, line it up where it needs to be, and draw 1/2 inch. I'm going to make a mark. And what I've done is I've just lined up those blue guides on that first line, and I'm marking at the top of the other one. Now, making a pattern off of something that you've already purchased isn't as exact as using your measurements, but I usually am pretty happy with the results that I get. Now, up at this shoulder seam, again, we want to have 5/8. So I'm going to line that up. Okay, and at the neckband, again, we're just going to do a 1/2 inch. The curve, I usually just kind of put my seam gauge, if I'm using my seam gauge, at an angle. It's one of the reasons I like the Luna Graphics ruler for seam gauges, is because it has a curved edge that I can put in here and get those nice curves. Just join those lines. Okay. Now we've got our hem. Let's go ahead and join these lines over here. So for our hem, we want about a 1-inch hem at the bottom. If you want your shirt to be longer than the previous one, now's your chance to go ahead and create one that's longer. What we're going to do is we're going to cut it out, and we're going to use that outer edge. This opened up, and as you can see, we have a full-size shirt pattern. That means that when we go to work with our knit fabric, instead of having to fold it in half and work with a folded edge, we'll be able to lay this out on a single layer of the knit fabric and cut it out that way. When working with knit fabric, that's a lot easier than trying to deal with extra layers. Now what we need to do is to go ahead and do the back section of our shirt. And I'm going to fold my pattern paper in half to take my top pattern and lay it on here. And everything is going to be the same except for that neck area. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my t-shirt. I've got that back section creased also. I'm going to we want to smooth it out. I'm laying that back section on the fold, and I'm bringing this shoulder seam up, and I'm lining it up with the shoulder seam on my pattern, smoothing everything out. So now what we need to do is mark the neck area, and this is going to be marking the difference between the front and the back. I'm going to go right into that seam and up to the shoulder. And now we have the difference between the front and the back sections of our shirt. And we can just trace around everything else and cut it out. Now I have the back sections. Let's go ahead and label that back t-shirt. We don't need to worry about a seam allowance because we traced the front section after the seam allowance was added. Okay. Now we need to get our sleeve traced. Sleeve, again, I'm going to fold my paper in half. Got my fold up here at the top. Want to make sure that you have smoothed out and pressed your sleeve. And what we're going to do is we're going to take, this is called the shoulder cap, we're going to take that area, we're going to place it on the fold, and we want to make sure that we can see our side seam. We want everything nice and smooth. That's going to be important for the sizing. Go ahead and draw my line here. And I'm going to draw this hemmed line, but we're going to adjust it in just a minute. Again, we're going to take our tracing wheel. We're going to go right in that seam line where the sleeve attaches to the front and back sections of the shirt. What we need now is our seam allowance. So for my sleeve here at the underarm, I only want 1/2 inch. That's just going to be less bulk. Same thing here, I'm just going to do 1/2 inch. We're going to go all the way around, join those lines. Now this is going to be the bottom edge, that hemmed edge. I want 1 inch there because that's going to give me room to fold it under and make sure that I have a nice hem. We're going to cut our sleeve out. So now we have our sleeve, and we need to shave off just enough to make up for the difference between the front of the arm and the back section. The easiest way to do that is to fold in half and then fold in half again. And you want to make sure you put some creases in there because we're going to use these lines. So what we want to do is we want 1/4 of an inch difference from this line here, the first crease, to this last section here, this last crease. It's not a big difference that we want. We just want about 1/4 of an inch. And we're going to start here. We're going to go out 1/4 of an inch. And then by the time we get here, we want to start bringing it back in. And then we'll get that trimmed off. We're just going to trim off that 1/4 of an inch. Over and line everything up. We can see that we've accounted for that difference between the front and the back. To make sure that we get it put on the shirt the right way, I'm going to put 2 notches is usually the back for patterns, and 1 notch is usually the front. Then I want to mark that center point. This is our t-shirt sleeve, and we cut 2. Now we're ready to move on to the neckband. So for the neckband, what I'm going to do is line this up, get everything nice and smooth, and get it as straight as it can. Okay, so for this shirt, I'm just going to kind of go around it. I've got right at 12 inches. Again, I've got my paper folded in half. I'm going to take that measurement, and I want my neckband to be 2 inches wide. That's going to include the seam allowance. We want to add in the seam allowance for the neck. Come straight down. And I'm going to make a mark here. And we're going to label, then we'll label this neckband cut 1. This cut out. Okay guys, so now you have your neckband, your sleeve, and your front and back pattern pieces drafted from a ready-wear t-shirt. Now for those of you that are ready, go ahead, grab your knit fabric, cut your t-shirt out, and get it sewed together. For those of you that might be a little apprehensive about working with knit fabric or putting together a garment, stay tuned because in our next video, I'm going to show you how to take your measurements and draft these exact same pattern pieces. Then in the following video, we'll lay them out on some fabric, get them cut out, and I'll show you how to sew them together quickly and easily. Enjoyed the video? I hope you go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you're not already a subscriber, hit the subscribe button. That's going to make sure you get notified as we put new videos up. Down in the comment section, if you have any questions, let me know and I'll be happy to answer them. And be sure to visit letslearntosew.com for all your pattern making and sewing needs.